It is UFC 243 and a pretty solid show here. It's solid, I'll say that. We have Khalid Taha against Bruno Silva, Nadia Kassem, Ji Yeon Kim, Brad Riddell, Jamie Malarkey, Callum Potter against Maki Pitolo, Jorgen De Castro against Justin Tafa, Jake Matthews and Rustam Akman. Quite frankly, a lot of people on the prelims you never heard of. Even if you've covered MMA full-time for a living, you might not hear these people. But outside of that on the prelims, Megan Anderson in action against Zara Fire de Santos. They keep giving Megan Anderson chances to shine here. And if she can put it together a couple times in a row, I think she'll get a title shot. But she's 1-2 in the UFC, and that one win came via an eye injury to Kat Zingano. So she doesn't have like a definitive win in this company yet. Do you think she gets it at UFC 243?
Yeah, I think they're high on Megan Anderson, right? Because that Holly Holm fight was obviously a decision. The Kat Zingano fight kind of sucked because people were like, oh man, like this thing ended so quickly, 61 seconds. And then she ran into Felicia Spencer. And Felicia Spencer has proven again that she's absolutely no joke. I mean, people can make the argument that she could have beat Cyborg, even though it was Cyborg won that fight. But, Felicia Spencer is something special in this division. So I believe Megan has the opportunity. Like you said, the UFC is really hoping that she can shine here. And if she can't, well, she's going to have some problems come October 7th, the day after this event.
Yeah, I think she gets the win here, and I think it is the definitive win that she needs to really stand out in that division. I had mentioned Jake Matthews. He's on this prelim show. Nadia Kassem also on this show. But the main card is a pretty interesting one. I think it's solid. I don't think like big main card pay-per-view like greatest of all time level or greatest of the year. We have Luke Jamo against Diego Lima, a couple of very competent fighters. Jamo's from New Zealand, so of course he's going to end up on this show on the main card. He's 2-1 in the UFC. He had a very hot streak coming into the company. He's facing Diego Lima, who since December has really, honestly, saved his career. He got into the UFC off of a loss in Titan, lost to Jesse Taylor and Yushin Okami, but has come back and beat Chad Laprise, and he beat Chad Laprise. He beat his brakes off. Beat Court McGee, always a tough out. I think Jamo is going to win this, but you know very well Diego Lima is a tough guy.
Yeah, it's tough for me to go against any Lima brother, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things, but Luke Jamo is no joko. Like this guy here can put the hurting on anybody, and I think maybe for the first time in a very long time, I'm going against a Lima. In this fight here, I am going to lean towards Luke.
Holly Holm, Raquel Pennington. This is an interesting fight. A fight between a couple of former title challengers. And anytime Holly Holm fights, it's like, okay, well, let's see what she's got. She's 2-5 in her last 7, although that Durandamy fight can certainly be argued, and she doesn't exactly get blown out of the water in these decision losses. However, this is not the first time these two fought. They fought 4.5 years ago. Holm beat Pennington via split decision. You've got Pennington coming off of a win over Irene Aldana after dropping fights to Durandamy and Nunes. So both women looking Pennington wants to stay on track. Holm wants to really get back on track. But for the UFC, this is kind of win-win. At least one of these girls is going to win the fight, and you can keep them relevant in the division, Joe. But who do you think that woman will be?
I think it's going to be Raquel Pennington. I think she catches her. Yeah, I think she eventually catches her within at least the second or third round, and maybe Holly wins the first round. I think Raquel turns it around in the second round and then takes over in the third round. So I'm going to go with Raquel in this one.
I like that. A bold pick, a solid pick. And I think it's really just bold because we remember when Holly Holm was coming up in 2015 and she beat the brakes off of Rousey, won that fight, and was undefeated champion, and looked unbeatable for a little bit, at least within the scope of that division. Not necessarily the case, and Pennington has always been just really solid. Tai Tuivasa against Sergey Spivak. You know they want Tuivasa to win. Him losing a third in a row would be crushing, especially considering his last two performances not just have been rough, they've been downright bad, I think. He came into the UFC. He won 3 fights in a row. He started 2 off with a knockout, and those were in Australia. So a little bit closer to home this time than the Ivanov fight. But I do think that he'll win, and I think they have orchestrated a situation where he will win.
He's a character, right? People love him. He does some funny things, clearly operates on a different frequency than most people. But yeah, that Junior Dos Santos loss, he shouldn't have played with fire. He played with fire. And then he got 2, not, how do I say this? Like, he wasn't as aggressive as we normally thought he would be against the Ivanov fight. And it ended up costing him the fight. So which two of us is going to show up here, right? Who's going to show up there when he competes? Obviously, he's much closer to home. Yes, you're correct. He's going to have a huge fan base and ovation marching him on as he gets to the octagon. And I do think he does emerge victorious, but I'm going to be interested to see what type of game plan he's trying to instill here. What type of fighter is he now after those 2 straight losses? Because he can't afford, well, not that he can't afford to have a 3rd loss in a row, definitely doesn't want to have a 3rd loss in a row.
Yeah, that 3rd loss in a row can be tough to overcome. And Tuivasa doesn't want to be there. Ally Quinta and Dan Hooker, damn, good fight. Yep. Good fight. Dan Hooker has won 5 of his last 6. He's got wins over Gilbert Burns, Jim Miller, Mark Jacasey, Ross Pearson, James Vick, all really tough guys. He has lost to the likes of Edson Barboza and Yair Rodriguez, but he's taking on Ally Quinta, who didn't look poised for a title shot. He got a title shot by Hooker Crook. He had beaten Kevin Lee, Ross Pearson, Joe Lozon, Masvidal, Sanchez, Kevin Lee again. Like, he's beaten some really great people. Lost to a couple of guys near the top of the division. But since Iaquinta came back from his 2-year hiatus, he has not been that consistent. He beat Diego Sanchez and Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee was a shell of his former self. I have Dan Hooker winning this, but it would not surprise me to see Iaquinta pull it off.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a technical fighter in Hooker against a blue-collar, bring my lunch pail, we're fighting for 15 minutes in Ally Quinta. I think the technical guy here will emerge victorious in Dan Hooker, but like you said, you can't ever count out Ally Quinta. He has this way of just getting in your kitchen and just beating you with your own frying pan. So we'll see what happens here, but definitely looking forward to this one here. It's a solid co-main event, and I think it's going to be fantastic. It's one of those things, well, referee, just step out of the way. Let's see these two go at it. So,
well, we have a solid main event. Israel Adesanya, the interim champion, against Robert Whittaker, the undisputed champion. Well, not undisputed. It's not undisputed until they unify it. Then it is undisputed. First thing I got to ask, Joe, will this fight happen? Because you know the luck in Australia.
Yeah. Dude, listen, I'm going to be the good guy here. I'm going to say yes.
I hope so. I hope so, too. It needs to. Now, this is an interesting one to break down. And I've talked about how Whittaker loves to get his underhooks in and loves to fight with that one hand down so he can do that. I'm very interested in how Robert Whittaker's fight stance changes as he fights Israel Adesanya, because I don't get the feeling Israel Adesanya is looking to take him down, Joe. No. I think Israel is going to use his length. He's going to use his surprise sort of attacks. This guy's fantastic. But you got to say the same thing about Robert Whittaker. He's beyond fantastic with that record and some of the fights that he's pulled off. I mean, the guy is something special. And to break this fight down, it's a special fight. I don't think people will really appreciate this fight for a long time. What sucks is because Robert Whittaker has been injured so many times, has been out for so long, in and out. This guy has the ability to be a superstar in this sport. I mean, every time we fight, people don't want to call him by Robert Whittaker. They want to call him Bobby Knuckles, right? Like he's got that nickname, which he hates. But it's a special fight. I think it's an absolutely good. It's going to be a stunner, right? It's going to be very technical. It's going to be part technical, part brutal, part grueling, part human chess. I'm just looking forward to it. It's going to be great. It's a hell of a fight. Round prediction, winner prediction, method prediction. I'm going to go with Robert Whittaker, round 4. Ground and pound. What do you think?
Controversial, split decision. Israel Adesanya.
Hey, I'm okay with that. And then you know what you do? You run it back in the same country again.
Boom.
I dig it.